Perfect.
Okay, and we're live. Thank you, everyone. We're going to be watching this in replay. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on with Zoom and Restream, but this is live but not live. Christopher Nelson here with Wealthward Capital, helping technology employees diversify into passive income portfolios. This is Reboot and Thrive, and today I am here with Tom Merrick, who is you call yourself a founder? Are you the founder?
I guess you could call founder. I'm the one and only employee of the
of the Bodyweight Warrior.
That's the one.
Well, I think in the startup community, right, we're very, we're fond of our founders.
Yeah.
So why don't you just give us, a quick overview of Bodyweight Warrior and, why you started it and what you do?
Sure. In essence, it's born out of what I end up falling into, and looking back on what happened now, it seems like a relatively logical journey, but obviously that's the power of hindsight. Essentially, I teach bodyweight training, so the use of the body instead of conventional resistance training, but that doesn't mean resistance training is bad. I use that as well.
Right.
I have a special focus on flexibility. That's kind of my big thing. I like helping people, to quote that old quote, realizing what their body, the beauty and strength of which their body is capable of, and whether that's expressed through doing some bodyweight training, whether that's expressed through doing flexibility work. A lot of the times we can get a bit locked up, and doing some physical practice can help open that and a lot of other things up. So that's kind of what I like to do. Primarily, I make YouTube videos, but I also coach people. I have an app. I do workshops. I do all sorts of things.
Right. No, that was actually a beautiful way to describe it. And so I do want to say that, I am bringing Tom to my audience because of the fact that I discovered his videos and working out, I think, doing the bodyweight training probably two or more years ago. I think it was right around, I remember when you got your 100,000 viewers. How long ago was that?
I couldn't tell you. I have the plaques over there, but I don't know exactly.
Probably have the plaques, but I remember that video, and I thought that was amazing too.
But so did I.
So when you think about how would you define bodyweight training?
I mean, in essence, it's just using your body's own resistance. As I said, I'm not against other forms of training. It's like you always just got to use the best tools for your trade. And I happened to stumble into bodyweight training and never went back. But in the past, I've done weight training, I've done powerlifting, I did some Olympic lifting, did kind of all sorts of things. But bodyweight training was really the thing for me that just kind of took my interest. One, because when you go to the gym, you can obviously get as creative as you want, but ultimately you're going to be restricted by lifting weights. Whereas bodyweight training has so many different avenues you can follow. Actually, originally what took me in was the handstand. It's one of those things that you can't necessarily fake. People can't just like randomly do a handstand. It's something that's always going to take time and effort to do. And it's there's actually a company or a group of people here in the UK called the School of Calisthenics.
Yeah,
a really nice group of people, but they have a phrase that I love to steal, and it's called redefine your impossible is what they say. And I think handstands are really great for that, because it's just one of those movements that you see people do, and it's like initially they had no hope in hell, and being upside down was very disorientating, and eventually they're just like standing on their hands. And it's something that most people can do with a bit of time and effort and some consistency, and it's a really interesting light bulb switch to go off in people's heads. But I mean, bodyweight training is essentially that, just using your body as resistance. You can kind of do it anywhere, providing you have a pull-up bar. And it's the sort of thing that can be scaled to any level. If you're a beginner and you never do anything, then bodyweight training is a fantastic place to start. In fact, most like GPP programs, like general physical preparation, which is like standard off-season training for sports, it will include some form of bodyweight training, because there's some element to understanding how to have coordination of your full body that then transfers better into sporting activities. So does that.
Well, and I think, and given the situation right now, and this, video is going into, homes throughout, different areas of the United States, especially where, people are densely populated. They don't have a lot of room to move. Maybe it's a neighborhood and maybe they have a garage, or maybe they have a backyard, or maybe they're in a 3-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, LA, New York.
It's a nice big apartment.
Exactly. And so, I don't think there's a better time to start bodyweight training. And so
Sure.
I think
it's the only option at the moment, really.
I think so, unless you've been doing a home gym for years and you have things kitted out and you're ready to go. I think that it is really the only option. And so I think today what I wanted to just sort of lay out for people is, how do you start a bodyweight training routine? And the one thing that you touched on earlier that I think is important for everyone, that I was very intrigued and it got me digging further, is understanding progressions, right? I think so. The simplest progression is doing the push-ups on your knees and then doing full push-ups. But why don't you kick off with, how do you start a bodyweight training, and obviously leveraging your videos, and then talk a little bit about progressions as well.
Sure. So ultimately, bodyweight training is something that is quite simple. As you said, your main thing is a tech audience.
Right.
I'm sort of a tech person. I did study industrial design, and I specified in UX design, app design at university. So I can appreciate I'm a logical person. And although it's not quite as clear cut as, you bench 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds, whatever it is, it essentially revolves around levers and mechanical advantage of muscles. So if you can understand levers, if I was to hold a weight here versus, right by my chest versus out a little bit further away from me and keep on moving, the weight's going to get heavier, and that's just simply down to the lever. So we just need to understand that, and that's really the foundation of understanding bodyweight training. Like, although, beginners might start bodyweight training because it's easy, if you understand it properly, I could make it so that it's so ridiculously hard that you couldn't even do a single rep of something that seems very simple. And that's what I like to say when we do workshops and we sort of take people through how to understand how to make things hard. We're getting to do something, we're like, okay, today we're basically showing you things that look easy, but are actually really, really hard. And that's kind of, if you do bodyweight training right, that's how it should be. And the one issue at the moment is, as everyone is at home, you see a lot of your more generic fitness influencers, which I have no problem with this. I think if you're trying to get people moving, trying to get people grooving, that's fantastic. That's the best thing you can be doing. But they're just, people doing 50 reps or 100 reps and all this sort of stuff of just like really, really simple exercises, and they call it bodyweight training.
Right.
Yes, it is, but it's not smart bodyweight training. You need to understand how to make it hard. I mean, like a simple explanation would be, okay, you can do squats with 2 legs, let's do 1 leg. That essentially makes it twice as hard. There's loads of different variations that you can do. But if you're just starting out, I actually did like a video each day, like a follow along 7-day program, like an at home one. It was requested a lot, so I just put it together 2 weeks ago. So it's just a 7-day program, something you'd repeat 4 to 6 weeks. So if you want to get started, there's that, and that one, like I could go through basically if you're at 0 or you're reasonable conditioning, you'll still get a good effect out of it. The main thing you'll need, and probably the hardest thing at the moment at home, is finding some way of doing pull-ups or pulling like a bodyweight row exercise. But if you get a little bit creative, you can use a table, you can use a towel through a shut door. If you have a door frame pull-up bar, Amazon usually sell them. That's probably the absolute number one investment that you should be making. But or rings if you have a tree outside.
Right. And I think actually that, so I would definitely, I'm going to put some links into that program, because that's one that I'm actually in the middle of going through right now. And yeah, it's still a little bit sore from the shrimp squats.
Shrimp squats, yeah.
Yeah. Those are, especially you get into some good sets with those things. Those things are brutal. Good. But I think that, and again, and I don't think it's overwhelming, but I think that is something to think about right now. And this is my encouragement to everyone, is how do we think about now starting and putting some routines in place that help us take care of our bodies physically, that we can help manage through these days where our lives are really compacted. And and so I think that Tom's, the 7-day program, I think is great. I think that's a great place to start. I also think there's another place to start. And what I want to talk a little bit is I actually discovered you because I was struggling because I had been working out and I'd gotten really tense, and I was looking for something that involved stretching, but involved some movement, but I was looking for follow-along videos. And that's really where I started was I think I started with your 5-minute, and then I graduated up to the 15.
Easy. Everyone can 5 minutes to do.
Well, but the thing is those movements, like some of the movements where you go down to the squat and then you come up, and then the ones where you hinge around on both sides. I find that if I literally get up out of bed in the morning and I start doing something like that, or I do that before I go to sleep at night, I sleep better, I walk better. And it's something that's very simple. So I also want to talk a little bit about, because you obviously have a very defined process around mobility, because you'll find that it's body weight training, but then also mobility as well.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, mobility is actually kind of a complex thing. This is the same as strength training, though. It's as complex as you want to make it. I think the reason the follow-alongs are popular, and I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but essentially it's yoga without the bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's not yoga, and I used to do yoga, and I think yoga is great, but a lot of people get turned off by that spirituality element of things. They don't necessarily identify it, don't find it useful. They just want to do the stretching. I mean, that stretching part is just one very small aspect of yoga out of all the asanas, and there's such variety to it. But that's essentially what I've accidentally figured out that my follow-alongs have become. I did not intend that to be the case. I was sharing what I kind of developed myself when I was around 20 years old. I had glandular fever, which I can't remember what it's called. In the US, you have a different name for it, but it's essentially like a relatively common viral infection that
is it mono?
Mono, yes, exactly. Yeah. So I had that, and I lost like 20 pounds in the space of a few weeks. I was wiped out, like couldn't get out of bed. And at this point I was pretty fit, and I'd been weight training, I'd been doing Olympic lifting, I'd been training pretty hard for a few years, and I just had like everything. I was super weak. So I got stuck into bodyweight training, and at the same time I was also like, wait a second, I can't touch my toes. That's not right. Like I'm 20 years old. I should be able to touch my toes at least. So I just, every night before I went to sleep, I started stretching, and it started with like 1 or 2 stretches, and then I'd do some research, and it'd be like, oh, that one looks good. I kind of feel that here, and that makes sense. And I'd add another one. And over a period of time, it developed into this sort of 30 or 40-minute routine. I just did it every night, and I felt great. I felt better. It wasn't the best way to get flexible, but I was having, without realizing it, kind of like that meditative sort of physical practice, taking time aside. I wasn't sat on my phone. I was just, unwinding, stretching, breathing, doing that sort of basic stuff. And that's really where the follow-alongs are from. They're not necessarily the best way to do flexibility, but it's the best way to get people to become it's not the best way to do it or make the quickest results, but it's the best way to get people to do it, which is the difference.
Right.
So just doing it itself is a great way to make progress. It's not necessarily the fastest, the most optimal. You can work on that. I've got plenty of other routines that are more suited to that. I share that information as well. But the follow-alongs are just, if you really are not sure where to start, and you just want to put something on and follow it along, like that's just doing it is the best thing.
It is, and that's where I can attest. I think that's what worked for me at first. Is I did them until I knew the routine so well that then I could do it myself. So now, no, seriously, like some of those simple routines. And that's why I asked earlier before we went live about the dog, because I remember doing some of those videos and there was a dog.
Oh, now I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. My dog used to love stretching. He just like climb on your face or sit on you. Like they thought it was a game.
Yeah. And, but the thing that I found, and to your point, is going in there and just putting on the iPad, following along, doing that until all of a sudden I realized, because now I think I've gotten to the point where I realize, okay, here's actually what my body needs. My body needs.
And these are generic as well. Like
Yeah.
I always encourage people like, okay, if you don't feel a stretch, you probably don't need to do it. If you feel it really badly, then you probably need to do it more. And you just need to listen to your own body in that sense. You know, you'll figure out what feels good and what works for you very quickly.
Yeah. The one thing I did enjoy about, even though they're only 5 minutes, is I did feel like I got at least my major muscles were pretty stretched out. You know, I thought that was good.
Yeah, and I did a lot of focus on considering like the general person, the person who's essentially sat a lot of the time. So sort of working on counteracting a lot of those things, focusing on like, we spend a lot of time in flexion. So this position, like, you know, going towards that fetal position, we don't spend much time in extension. So a lot of the routines are focused on like opening up this anterior side, pecs, biceps, especially the neck as well. Usually involve quite a bit of neck work, stretching out core, hip flexors, that sort of thing, and the stuff that's, you know, more tonically involved in being flexed over.
The one thing I didn't really realize that I needed a bit of work on is some of the work that you actually do on the wrists and on the arms, because I think that as a technology employee,
if you're typing a lot,
spending a lot of time on the typewriter, right? When you start just doing some of those positions and moving your body, and the one thing that I think is interesting that I think most people don't understand, that just, and I think Tom said it once, but trying to tease this out, is that just getting into movement and just moving every day, your body, that's a progression in and of itself, just doing some movement and then doing some level of, you know, these simple body weight movements in an earlier progression. That is, again, that's movement, that's progress. And I think that right now, that's my encouragement to everyone, is how do we move and not be static? Because the instinct right now, in the midst of a crisis, in the midst of being stuck, is to feel like I'm stuck and I can't move. But the medicine to that is to really move and to move our bodies.
Absolutely, it makes you feel good. And I think there's an important differentiation to make between what Paul Chek would call working in versus working out. So working out would be something like going to the gym. This requires energy to be spent to do the exercises, whereas I would consider a lot of flexibility stuff, a lot of breathing activities, as what would be called working in versus working out. So it's energy building. You know, saying to somebody that they need to be active, most people would take that as like, oh, I need to go and I need to do a run, or I need to this. And like, most people can't, like, you know, if you're already tired, if you're stressed out, if you're not feeling great, the last thing often that you want to do is sometimes exercise, although it might be the thing that you need to do. But sometimes doing something that will make you feel better might then encourage other habits, and it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think stretching can often be those things that people actually do after. It's like, oh man, I actually feel really great after doing that, rather than, you know, almost puking and feeling like, we can get to the hard stuff later, but just to get things moving. And it's interesting that the Western sort of approach is a very different approach to the Eastern philosophy. Like, if you're sick, Western approach is to go sit in bed, lie down,
right,
don't move, don't do anything, which, you know, has its merits depending on how sick you are. But Eastern philosophy is getting moving, doing things like Tai Chi. And part of the reason for that is the movement of lymph fluid around the body. If we move lymph around the body, it's going to help our body fight the illness. You know, that's why when you're ill, those lymph glands start swelling up. Right. So yeah, just sitting and doing nothing is, we're not beings that are supposed to be inside sat doing nothing. I think if anything, that this isolation, quarantine period has taught us that we crave to be outside to some degree.
Well, and I 100% agree. And I mean, I think right now, right, I mean, you're seeing this I think this tension that's building where everyone is inside. We're not able to have interaction. We're feeling pent up. And I think that some simple movement can release that.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect either. Like, I've literally, the last 2 weeks, I've been super busy, and probably 1 week I was literally sat all day, every day, bar, like filming the videos. And then today I literally have done nothing. I've just sat and worked all day just because I've been busy. But I feel crap because of it. Like, my neck's achy, and but I just want to stretch or do something now.
Let me recommend Tom Merrick's 15-minute before you go to bed stretching.
Yeah,
I am going to actually link to that, because I actually found that was one that was nice and relaxed. It doesn't get your heart.
Yeah, it's not too. I've actually got I've got a relaxed flexibility. I've got two relaxed flexibility routines actually. So there's the 15-minute one, which is good. It's not too much intensity.
Yeah.
There's a relaxed one, which is like a before bed evening routine. And then part of that 7-day program, there's also another relaxed one, but that one's a little bit like, I left it so there's basically no commentary, and like you put your own relaxing music on in the background and just like sit in 5 or 6 poses.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that one. I'm just in the part where you want to cry a little.
That's more midweek.
That's right. That's where I am. What about diet? I know that you've had some videos, but what would you encourage people right now thinking about, starting to move? Would you encourage anyone on diet? I know that you have a few videos, but I know that you're not.
I like to talk about it. Something I feel very passionate about. I put a lot of personal research in, and I have a certain perspective. I used to share more information about this, but then I kind of got fed up of having vegans argue on my videos, so I stopped posting. I kind of just focused on what I do, and I have some education. I've got some qualifications in nutrition, but I don't see myself as qualified as a lot of people out there. But I tend to follow a few simple things that I would just recommend, just stuff that's basic as well, like eating whole foods, super simple. Don't be afraid of animal products. Animal products are not bad for you. If we look at the work of like Weston A. Price and a few other people, all indigenous cultures had some form of animal products. Some had more than others. We look at Eskimos or people in really northern hemispheres versus equatorial people. But essentially, I think the one thing I try to live by is eat how my grandmother ate or how my grandparents ate. I don't think you can go too far wrong with that. One thing that I do consider part of the diet is light.
Wow.
And the importance of getting sunlight exposure. That's especially at the moment where people are trapped inside all the time. Natural light is hugely different to our chronological clock, daylight cycles, and we get very much out of entrainment where we sit on screens like I'm doing right now late at night. I do have blue blocking glasses. I have orange ones as well, but I tend not to wear those for the podcast because they just look a bit weird. But yeah, certainly trying to get outside when it's light. If you get like what are they called? The measure in lux, can't remember the name of them. The measure basically the intensity of light. If you were to sit inside,
light meter,
like where you want. Sorry?
I think it's a light meter, right? It's the same thing they use in photography. Sure,
yeah. So you have lux. So if you were to sit inside, like right now you're in a pretty well lit room, it might be like, bright sunlight, 3,000 lux. If you step outside, it's like 180,000.
Wow.
Even for a direct sunlight for a window, it's like, again, 3,000 or 4,000 versus 100,000+ outside in the sun. But yeah, eat how your grandparents ate, get lots of sunlight, obviously try not to get burnt. It's kind of the two things that I would stick to. But yeah, I try not to touch too much on this because there's ultimately a lot more people who know a lot more than I do out there.
Well, it sounds like you've learned to focus, stay in your lane.
Stay in my lane. Yeah, I just can't be bothered with the arguments. It's a waste of energy. If people ask me, I'll happily tell them. But yeah, I'm not gonna preach to anyone.
Well, I just think that during this time, I'm with you in the sense that I'm just really focused on trying to get whole foods, try not to just overeat and comfort eat. I know that that's an easy trap to get into.
Especially if you're bored as well.
Pardon?
Especially if you're bored as well.
Yeah.
It's like what else am I going to do? Oh, there's a fridge over there.
Well, and the one thing, my wife and I are working on is just stay hydrated. Like just drink water before you think about grabbing any food. Just drink some water and that'll be good.
Also, if you're not a fan of water, I have like a soda siphon thing. So it's basically like put water in it, put a CO2 capsule in, and like make sparkling water for you.
Yeah, we have that. They call it Soda Stream.
Soda Stream, yeah, sure. Like it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially if you like a little sparkling water.
Without
definitely.
Loads and loads of bottles and plastic things.
Right. I actually, I don't know if I mentioned to you this last time, but I've all of a sudden become this baker. Like I'm just huge into baking our own bread. Mentioned. Yeah. So yesterday was pain au lait, some French bread.
Oh, very nice.
With milk. Yeah. And we put some semi-sweet chocolate chips on top, not inside, just on top. But Yeah, and we're doing Irish soda bread, all that stuff. So it's really good.
Fantastic. I learned how, I think I mentioned to you as well, I learned how to make sourdough a few years ago. I actually don't eat bread at all. I don't eat grains apart from white rice. I feel better.
Right.
And my skin used to be like, I had really bad acne. I was on Accutane and a bunch of other drugs when I was younger.
Yeah.
Never solved anything, but diet is the one that had the biggest influence for me.
Oh, wow.
Bread seems to be a trigger. But anyway, I avoided it for a few years at this point, and I watched a documentary just looking at like the sort of things that were important throughout this societal evolution. And one of the things they talked about was bread was being like a fundamental building block for society. And they sort of talked about the origins of sourdough and fermented bread and stuff back in Egypt and all over. And I was like, oh man, I should really learn how to make this if it's been such an important role, and I should try it. So I did for a bit, and it was a really fun experiment. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of having lots of time now, being at home. Like,
yeah,
if you want to do something, then you have time to do it.
Oh yeah, and you're not that far from, okay, wait, I left that rising, now I'll go just do a little bit of a knead, put it in a thing.
Yeah, like to make sourdough, it takes a good day to make a loaf. Not a day of actual work, but you have to do something, leave it, come back.
Yeah, come back, and you just have to nurture it a little bit. Yeah,
exactly.
Till you get to that bake stage.
And you get some tasty bread at the end, or maybe after like a few goes, you might get some tasty bread.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I've hit some good ones. Other ones I realized, okay, I got to rethink this recipe, but.
It took me like 3 months to get something edible.
Well, we're here at the bottom of the hour. Thank you so much for your time, Tom. I think I'm just going to do a quick recap. Number one is, now is a perfect time to start a bodyweight workout, and bodyweight workout really just starts with movement. Tom has some very simple 5, 15-minute, 20-minute videos that, again, remove a lot of the fluff, just get you moving in place. And then you can actually there's a special 7-day follow-along. I'm going to link to it in the notes that you can follow along for 7 days. I'm right in the middle of it right now. It's a phenomenal workout. You can progress as hard as you want. I think that, and if we didn't touch on it, we can touch on it right now. But I think you're seriously saying, Tom, and I believe this myself, but I want to hear from you, is that you can progress as hard as you want. Like, you don't need to go and find an iron bar. Like, if you want to work out hard, you can progress to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always ways you can nerf stuff so that it becomes really freaking hard.
Yeah.
It kind of just depends. It gets to a point where, like, you see gymnasts that are just actual freaks and they're stupidly strong. But for your average person, yeah, you can make things stupidly hard with a little bit of understanding about levers and mechanical advantage for body weight. But what was I going to say? I'm sure I had something that I just wanted to mention as you were wrapping up. I've completely forgotten.
No, I'm still not through with the wrap up. The other thing I wanted to mention is, from a diet perspective, eat like your gran, eat whole foods, very simple foods, and get sunlight. Like, I thought the sunlight thing was very interesting, because I know
open a window, get some fresh air.
Yeah, get some fresh air, and just
keep your sanity during this crazy time.
It's definitely needed. And I just want to take a minute. Thank you, Tom, for all you do. I think that, you probably don't meet a lot of people, but I'm definitely somebody who, your videos have really helped move me forward in my health. And it's something that I share with my kids. My kids come in and will know, hey, it's Tom's video. And sometimes they try and do it. Sometimes they don't, but it's all good stuff. And I really appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm just happy to help. That's kind of the point that I make YouTube videos. I started off just sharing what I did, and the idea was just trying to help people out as well. I really enjoy doing.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Cheers.